So you may be wondering what I'm doing printing something with just infill, no walls, no top layer, why I'm also mixing a bag of concrete, and why I look like a really scuffed knockoff Bob Ross. Well, the answer to that is DEKU TREE concrete planter. I'll explain. So every month in our community on the live streams, the last Friday of the month, we do a live stream called Look What I Printed. It's an excuse to show off projects and prints people in our community have done over the past month to get those creative juices flowing. Because let's be honest, we've seen enough flexy whatever meme print of the months. These streams that we do every month are just an excuse to self-promote, to show off cool things you've been doing with your 3D printer. And last month, a member of our community by the name of Pitchfork Thumb showed off a planter that they made. Now, they used a method where they 3D printed a mesh form to use as the basis for a concrete planter. And during the live stream, I saw that and I went, hey, that's pretty cool. I kind of want to do that myself. I kind of want to give this a try. That is really cool. And as you can see, I've gone ahead and done it. And this was a fun project to do. I learned quite a bit. I'll go through the whole process if you want to replicate this yourself, because this again was a relatively simple project. You can do it. Anyone can do this at home with stuff you can buy at a hardware store. And of course, a 3D printer, any 3D printer will work for this. So without further ado, let's get started. And the first thing we have to do is find something to print. So the original idea I had was to print something like a statue. And I was going to do a print like this, something like this, but I kind of realized this might be biting off more than I can chew for a first print. While this, I believe this is like a King Arthur model I printed a couple of months or years ago. While this would look really cool, this is probably a little too complicated. So I decided to split the difference. And I figured, hey, they did a tree stump. I like Legend of Zelda. Let's do a DEKU tree because, I mean, Link, my boy, it's a DEKU tree. It's pretty cool. So to print this was quite simple. I found a model that I wanted to use online. But when it comes to printing it, one, scale it to whatever size you want. Obviously, for a planter, you kind of want to go a little bit bigger if you're planning to put a bigger plant in it. And then you just print it. Now, depending on the printer, you may have to split it into multiple parts. Now, I have a large format 3D printer. I have a Venture XL. It could print 600 millimeters cubed, which would have fit this print for the most part. But I decided to print it on my Prusa Core 1L. Why? Just to show you that you don't need a large printer to do a large product like this. Most modern slicers, I use Prusa Slicer because it's a Prusa printer, have the ability to slice a model into multiple different parts in the slicer itself. Again, I also added some dowels within the slicer just to make alignment and to help glue everything together a little bit stronger. And then for printing, again, you just print with infill. Now, I did print with bottom layers. I used 2 or 3 bottom layers, I believe. 10% infill, gyroid infill. We don't do any of that grid stuff here, so we use gyroid infill. 10%. We also did no walls. We don't need walls here, and no top layers. And then we printed this. Now, I printed it in PETG. It is summer now in Southern Ontario, Canada here. It gets pretty hot and humid, and with concrete being an exothermic reaction, it generates heat as it cures. I was a little worried about PLA kind of mushing on me, so I printed it in PETG also because, again, this is all infill. It's all basically a single wall print with the infill. PETG has pretty dang good layer adhesion. Also, I still had a bunch of PETG gloop left over for my giant Gundam build. So if you like cool projects with 3D printers, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and make sure you check out that Gundam build that I did last year. I have a 6-foot Gundam in my basement. It's 80 pounds. It's 3D printed. It's pretty cool. You should check it out. So I have leftover gloop from that, and I use that to hold this all together. So this was printed in multiple prints on the Core 1L. The total amount of filament was about 1.3 kilograms of PETG filament. Glooped all together, the entire print was 300 millimeters tall and about 650 millimeters-ish wide at its widest point. And once it was all glued together, I went crazy on the gloop on the seams. I slathered that on. You can also use, because this is infill, you're not getting flat surface to flat surface. You can use something like a construction adhesive or an epoxy to really glue those parts together. You kind of want to make sure it's really together before you go and coat it. So now that we have our final print mesh base layer ready to go, we need to cover it in concrete. Now, we aren't covering it with concrete per se. With concrete, there's rocks and pebbles and whatnot in there. That's going to be really hard to keep smooth, and it's also not going to impregnate the 3D printed mesh too well. So what I used was Type S mortar. I believe this is the mortar used for like bricklaying between the layers of brick. So I used Type S mortar. I mixed up way more than I needed. I bought one bag of mortar and I mixed up the whole thing, and I did not need to use that much. So if you are doing this at home, I suggest mixing as you go. It'll help prevent it from prematurely hardening on you if you mix too much up at once. And also it'll prevent what happened where I had a bunch left over. Luckily, I had something I could use it for, but I made way too much Type S mortar. So mix up small batches, mix it as you go. And I mixed it up a little wetter than I should have, which actually worked out pretty good because it was able to really get into the 3D printed mesh, especially around the stumps here. So it was really able to get into that mesh, really impregnate the print itself, make it all nice and solid. And then as it set up, I went about giving it its final details. So at first I kind of just slopped it on, let it fill everything up. And then as it started to set a little bit, I went in with my rubber gloves, and I highly suggest wearing rubber gloves, some heavy duty rubber gloves with this. Just some like kitchen dishwashing gloves will work, because concrete is something you kind of don't want to get on your skin. Some people have reactions to it. It's not the greatest to get on there. It's not going to kill you or anything. You just wash your hands after, but wearing gloves just makes the cleanup a lot nicer. And also, I found using it, especially around like the details like the face and the eyes here, you can just use your gloves and just kind of push it into all the nooks and crannies and crevices. And then I let it set. Now, I didn't go and give it like a super clean, smooth finish after that initial coat of Type S mortar, because we were going to put another coat on top of this, and I wanted something grippy for it to bite into. So after that was all cured up, I let it actually cure for a full day. The next day I went in and I coated it with parging mix. Now, there is other materials you can use for the outer coat here. I think it's called TruePak X is what Pitchfork Thumb used for their outer coating. I couldn't find it in Canada, or I couldn't find it locally here. So I figured I just went to Home Depot. I just got some parging mix, which is like the concrete you use for like finishing walls and surfaces and like putting over brick. And I mixed that up, and I just covered the entire surface again with the parging mix. This allowed me to build it up a little bit thicker in some areas. I did go a little bit thinner around the face just for areas where I wanted the details to show through a little bit more. Because you're coating everything, you don't need to worry so much about details on the initial print. The initial print I used for this was very, very boxy, almost like an N64 game model. As you can see here, that the entire initial print's completely buried. So if there's little details you want to add or remove during the coating process with the concrete, be free to experiment. This is one of the reasons I like this project. When you 3D print something, it looks like everything else that's been 3D printing. By going this route, this is one of one. Even if I were to make another one of these exactly the same way, it would never look exactly the same. This is unique, which is something you kind of can't do with 3D printing. So we use 3D printing to create something unique, which is the exact opposite of what 3D printing is, because it's replicating. So we put the parging mix on, and then once I was happy with how it finally looked, I needed to do the final coat to get the texture I wanted. So I mixed up a little bit more parging mix, and I made it a little bit soupier than you're supposed to. I slathered it on, and then I used the back of my hand with the gloves, and I just kind of ran my hand up the walls vertically, and this gave it this kind of like almost like a tree barky, rough texture finish. I coated the inside as well, just to cover it up a bit. Now, if I were to do this again, first thing I learned, I should have put more holes in the bottom of this. Since this has a bottom layer, I went through with a drill and just drilled out a bunch of holes in the bottom. I also removed some plastic in the middle as well. That way, when there is a plant and dirt in here, the water can drain out. You don't want to make a bucket. You need to have the water drain out. Otherwise, you're going to have a bad time. So if I were to do this in the future, I would use a negative layer or negative model in the slicer and just punch a big hole in the middle, or just drill a big hole in the middle if you were like me and you forgot to do that. So that's that. So now concrete's all dry and it looks like a DEKU tree, but it's just concrete. It's gray. We need to paint it. we need to get our Bob Ross on. Painting it was relatively simple. This is an outdoor project, so I just went to the local home hardware to me, and I just went up to the person. I'm like, hey, I'm painting something that's concrete that's going to be outside. What kind of cheap paint do you recommend? Because I don't want to spend a lot of money. And they're like, beauty tone, clear base, velvet, acrylic exterior paint. And then I had them tint it bison brown, or Plains bison brown. It was the cheapest thing they had, and it worked. So I slathered that first coat on. I just slathered on, used an old brush, fill all the nooks and crannies, just slather that first base coat on. I let it dry. For the mouth here, I used some black paint that I had left over from a previous project. Painted that. I also put some shadows under the eyes just to give it a little bit of accent there. I let that base coat dry, and then I went in and did my favorite thing that I learned from Warhammer painting, dry brushing. So for dry brushing, it's quite simple. All I used, some actual war paints that I had left over from, again, previous projects. You just add a little bit of white or yellow to the brown, and you just very, very lightly use your brush, get it in there, get it very, very dry, dab it on like a paper towel or something so there's barely any paint on your brush, and just sort of start dry brushing it. There's plenty of tutorials online on how to do dry brushing if you want more detail. But I went around the outer lower areas of the tree. I did some green dry brushing to kind of simulate moths. And then to make the tree just kind of look a little bit more textury instead of just flat brown, I painted some lighter brown on. And again, I just made lighter brown by taking brown and adding white to it. A little bit of yellow as well around the eyes here, with a little bit of green as well, just so that the eyebrows stand out and the moustache stands out a little bit more. And then the final dry brush coat with just white, just to kind of bring out some highlights and some accents. And then once all that was done, I did another trick I learned from my Warhammer painting days, and I put everything through a wash. Now, what a wash does, I used black acrylic paint, watered it down heavily, and then you just slather that on. What that does is it basically allows like all the little nooks and crannies to just get a little darker. Okay, so because it's a very diluted paint, it's a very diluted wash, it's going to just seep into all the little low spots and fill those nooks and crevices with a little bit darker paint. And that kind of gives you a very quick, easy way to give it more depth and detail and shading. It works really good, and it came out pretty good on here. It's not a drastic night and day difference before and after the wash, but it does do enough to make it worth it doing, in my opinion. So now that that is all done, again, I let it dry for a couple days, and then I got a shoulder injury. Somehow I managed to get what's called frozen shoulder. Adhesive capsulitis is apparently the proper term. And then this project sat on a shelf for like almost a week because I literally can't move my shoulder higher than this on my right arm. Left arm's good. Left arm's good. Right arm, I can't go up higher than this. And apparently this is going to last months to years. So I had to wait for that to stop hurting so that I can put this on the desk and film this part of the video. So now that this part of the video is done, I can go put this outside. And now we have it outside. I need to do some little bit of landscaping back here before I actually put this in its final spot and its final home. It's probably going to be underneath one of the other trees I have in the backyard here. But I'm hoping over the next couple of years this holds up pretty well. It should fade a little bit. We should get a little bit of moss or lichen growth going on it. That'll help. It'll help its character. Again, this is one of those cool projects that takes something that's 3D printed, which, again, if you 3D print something, it's going to be the same as everything else that's 3D printed off the same model, and we've personalized it. We've made it unique. This is a one-of-one planter. No other planter will look exactly the same as this one. We covered it in concrete. We did our own texture work. We did our own painting. This is a unique thing now. And this was a fun little project. So if you got a 3D printer at home and you're interested in doing something like this, just go and do it. This is not that expensive of a project. The cost of filament So a little over a spool of filament. A bag of Type S mortar here in Canada ran me $11 at the local Home Depot, and I did not need to use a whole bag, so you can do multiple projects with the same bag of concrete. Again, a bag of parging as well, I think was like 20 bucks. And then the one can of paint that I did buy was another $20, $25. And again, there's a lot of paint left over. So yeah, if you're doing one of these projects, it might run you $50, $60, $70 if you have to buy everything. But if you plan on doing multiple of these, the cost goes down pretty quickly. So if this is something you want to try out, do it. I would love to see pictures of other things that people have done on the Discord. There's a whole channel on the Discord called Look What I've Printed. Go post something there. Do one of these yourself, make something unique, and share it there, and get other people inspired in doing projects with their 3D printers, because 3D printers are great tools, but they're even better tools when you add them to an additional hobby. If you do FPV quadcopters, printing replacement parts, if you do RC cars, if you do concrete work, apparently you can 3D print a mesh for concrete forms. There are so many different things that you can do with 3D printing other than just printing flexi landfill prints. So get inspired, get out there, do something. If you like this video, make sure you like the smash button, ring the bell, subscribe if you want to see more cool stuff like this. And I would love to see your comments below. Let me know what you think of this project, what you think I should have done different, some tips or tricks, or if you do want to do one of these yourself, let me know what you're doing. So I hope you enjoyed this video. You take care. I got to get off the ground because it rained last night and my butt's getting wet. So enjoy the rest of your week. Be safe out there. Wash your hands. I'm Taylor, the Canuck creator, and I will see you in the future. Cheers. Yeah. Yep, my butt's all wet.